Wow. Today we're talking about divorce and what I think of, like, we do everything heart-centered. How is it possible to navigate a divorce in a heart-centered way where there's no winners and losers, that the kids, and not just the kids, but the partners can come out of it feeling like they did their best, and they're still a family, and it's not this power over, or this like really tough situation. And
yeah, I'm feeling hopeful after this conversation that there are people out there doing this good work. And I haven't always thought that mediation, was the right thing, but having this conversation with the both of them, I'll think everyone will probably have a moment going, wow, if I could have had a divorce with mediators like that, I probably could have got through it a little bit differently. So anyway, everybody listen in. This is a good one.
The world is a lot right now. Are you feeling it? We all need new tools to help us walk through the chaos with grace, ease, and compassion for each other and for ourselves. In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who can bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. It's time to level up and be warriors for our kids and our communities. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that it really does take a village to raise our kids. We hope that this podcast serves to create and support that community for you. Join us as we discuss and practice our core tools, which are proven mind-body techniques that can be used by anyone to improve your life on a daily basis.
Welcome back to the Warrior Parent Podcast. We are so glad you are joining us today. And today we are speaking with two wonderful women, Sarah Jacobs and Jamie Berger. And they are co-founders of Jacobs Berger LLC, which is a boutique divorce and family law firm in Morristown, New Jersey. Sarah is certified by the Supreme Court of New Jersey as a matrimonial law attorney, and both Sarah and Jamie are qualified as family law mediators, and they have been partnering with families for 20 years. In an effort to reform how divorce clients view the role of their attorneys, Jamie and Sarah have founded a firm that helps de-stress the divorce process by empowering divorcing families to transform chaos and circumstances into choices and change that work for them. That sounds amazing. Welcome to you both. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having us. We'll speak over each other from time to time. That's what we what we do as partners.
I know, this is fun. I think it's been a while since we've had like a group of four, but four like women on the show is going to be really powerful. So I'm super excited about this. And I am no stranger to divorce. So I would be straight up with you. And I wish I had found you girls about 15 years ago. But I am feeling optimistic about this conversation because I know so many people who have gone through this, and it is nothing short of traumatic for most people. I know personally for my situation, we had started with mediation, but let's just say we didn't end up there. So I'm super curious about how you guys go about this and how you make the divorce and the navigation through divorce different than other people. So I am super excited to have you guys here. I don't know who wants to start, Sarah or Jamie, but take it away. Let us know how you guys got all excited and started this endeavor.
So I can take this one.
Okay.
So I think Sarah and I, both having varied experience in our, young lives as practicing family law attorneys, we came across, things that we respected within the industry and then things that we really didn't. And when we formed our firm together, we really tried, we sat down, we realized that, we have a very common approach to divorce. We look at cases very similarly. We always got along very well in that in that vein, even when we were on opposite sides before we were partners. And so we took that experience and we said, how can we transform this for our clients? And we decided early on that it starts in that first conversation that you have with a client, and just listening to them, understanding what is driving them in that moment, understanding, the emotional toll and the impact that, the process can take, or, as they're endeavoring to get into the process, just kind of that uncertainty and insecurity that they're feeling, and how can we shape that conversation into, a plan for them, and making sure that they understand that there's, measured, actionable steps that we're going to take in order to get them to where they want to be in the end, and understanding that, and it's sometimes hard for clients to see it when they're starting the process, but there is an end. There is a life after divorce, oftentimes a very happy one. And so, you get through the kind of the turmoil of the process, and then so it's something that we kind of layered into all of those discussions with clients, and we realized early on that it made such a difference. That it, sitting in a room and hearing somebody tell you everything that they know about the law, that's not what is going to help you, get through that difficult time. And so that really was the kind of foundation for de-stressing the divorce process, just trying to really give people action steps and, a plan for, things that they can do to help themselves, how to empower them. And, that focus is there throughout our entirety of our time with our clients. And it's not something that Sarah and I or our team lose sight of. And so that has been really impactful. And we see the other side, and it's, I think it's what drives both Sarah and I to do what we do every day, is because we see people, make meaningful change throughout the process, and then emerge the other side, having these happier lives. And so that's really important for us.
Because how could you show up and do that work every day otherwise, right? Because that is just really, really difficult stuff. I mean, in many cases, I know for me, that woman, she was a woman, was sort of like my counselor, right? Like personally, because you're devastated, you're crying, you're feeling guilty about your kids and the shame of divorce and all those things. So you're carrying that load too, right? And then, and then there's kids and there's money and there's like all those things, right? So wow, that is remarkable. So do you guys have like, sort of ground rules, if you will? So, for example, a kind of a crazy couple comes in and you're like, okay, you're doing your best to do all the things that you just described, but then still knowing like you guys aren't going to make it in mediation. Do you have clients that you turn away going, yeah, no, like this is not possible? I mean, are there people that show up like that, or do you guys feel like you can kind of take on and calm sort of any situation?
I think it depends on whether we're acting in the capacity as the mediator in that, in that particular set of circumstances, or whether we're the advocate for one of those clients. And I think in either case, you really can get sort of a feel, if you will, as to what is a good fit for mediation and what isn't a good fit for mediation. But I also think that, we talk about this a lot. There's a life cycle to a case, right? And so it could be that very early on in the case, it is ripe for mediation. And then, as you said, Debbie, like maybe it falls apart and it becomes intractable and the court has to step in, or litigation tactics have to take place, or it can start out very, fueled and burning very hot, and the parties can get to a place where they find a little bit of agency in these decisions, and they sort of realize the capital emotionally and financially that they're spending, and they realize how broken the system is, and they want some control. And so at that point, you can bring them to mediation, or it ebbs and flows both. I mean, I talk all the time about a very contested case that I had during the course of COVID. I can't even count. I think it was something like 58 mediation sessions between the lawyers and the clients, and just the lawyers with the mediator. And it was hugely contested. It was a 3-year case, but not once did we file a motion or go to court. The case did ultimately settle. And so that, you have to read the room, like when the lawyers have to step in and when the mediator has to step in, and like when the right moment to pull away or to come back or to re-engage is. And a lot of that is getting, as Jamie said, to know your client's goals and also like their temperament for participating in the process as well as being led through the process. Because as Jamie said, any lawyer can sit in a room and spit law at you. But if the client's eyes are glazing over and they're not there, they're not with you, they're not understanding you, they're not taking it in, they're not processing it, they're not making decisions for themselves, your skill as a lawyer is wasted because you can't do them any service because they're not able to understand what they can do in that moment. And they have to be there. They have to be present and sort of like focused and choosing to engage.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm wondering if we should step back just a moment. I was just thinking about this for the audience. Like, so can you define the difference between mediation and what they might see with the divorce attorneys, just so it's clear for our audience?
Absolutely. I mean, so for mediation is a form of alternative dispute resolution. It's a process by which you engage a neutral third party mediator who acts, oftentimes it is an attorney, but I always, and Sarah and I, like you mentioned in our introduction, we both are qualified mediators in New Jersey. So when we're mediating a case, we take off our lawyer hat because we're not advocates anymore. We're neutrals, but it's difficult because you're still a lawyer, right? So you still know the law, but you can't provide legal advice in the context that you can for a divorce client, a litigation client. So there's a line that you have to understand, you have to toe, because you're not advocating for either party's position as the mediator, as the neutral party. But it is a very effective process versus litigation, which is when you enter into the court system, you file a complaint for divorce or whatever filing is necessary in the state that you're in. And that starts the process of a litigated case. At any time, a litigated case can become a mediation case. And in fact, where we practice, there are certain court mandated settlement processes that the court will require us to go through in litigation cases in an effort to try to have those cases resolved out of court, sometimes effectively, sometimes not, as it will be, depending on the issues that are at play. But mediation as a standalone is really just its own process where everybody has to be willing to be cooperative and collaborative and come to resolutions and nobody should leave the mediation process completely happy, because that would mean that you didn't compromise enough or at all. And but it really requires, it requires all parties to be, invested in that process for it to be successful.
It's as I'm listening to you talk about it, and Sarah had mentioned the broken system being, I see this when you're in divorce court, essentially. But I'm thinking about this alternative in mediation. And Debbie made a joke about her lawyer being her therapist, but I think that's a big part of it, really, because obviously, as you said, if you've got people in there who are dysregulated, who are just like they're out there in rage or shame or hurt or looking for revenge, like that is not a good space to come together collaboratively. And yet to me, it feels like it behooves everyone to calm down, to regulate their bodies, take some deep breaths, whatever, so that they can stop and say, like you were saying, Jamie, what is it that you want? Because, we all have things that are important to us, and find that place where it works, because essentially you're still a family when there's kids. And so to find this way to do that. So I'm just curious, like how do you have some training that specifically in these kinds of therapeutic, and what's that look like? I'm really interested to hear about that.
So I think at least from our state in New Jersey, you do have to be trained to be a mediator. So to be qualified as a mediator on the court roster to do what's known as economic mediation in our state, you have to do 40 hours of training, comprehensive role playing. Both lawyers and some psychologists participate in the training and teach us sort of like how to do conversation. Unfortunately, you don't actually have to be trained to be a private mediator, and there are a lot of people who do private mediation, and mediation is very it's a broad range of services that people provide. Some people say, like, we'll do 3 mediation sessions, I'll give you a draft agreement, you have one time to edit the agreement, and that's it, and it's a very cost driven perspective as opposed to a, a long-term process to get the family to where they need to be.
Right.
And, I think a lot of family lawyers do, like, they come from psychological backgrounds in their college years, or they come from, the social science area, if you will. Many don't, though. And, like, we're dealing with people's money, we're dealing with finances, we're dealing with taxes, we're dealing with bankruptcy. We're kind of touching like every area most of the time in people's lives. So honestly, and I hate to say this but I really do feel it. And it's something Jamie and I talk about all the time. When a lawyer has it and when a lawyer doesn't have it. You need a little bit of emotional intelligence in this field to sort of read people and read the situation and know how to talk to your client and know how to talk to the other side and know when something's working and know when something's not working and change tactics when your own client can't hear you or the other side is just speaking a language that makes no sense. And it can be incredibly frustrating, and it can be disheartening as the mediator when something's there and somebody's stopping the process. It can be frustrating as the litigator when you're so close and it falls apart over something sort of disingenuous or not important to the whole context. But then you have to take a step back and be like, there's a reason why this isn't working in this moment. And what can we do to salvage, or like, let's take a break and figure out these people need some time, right? To like re-engage in the conversation and come back to the focus, like you said, Marci, of like, they have, even though they don't know they do, they have a common goal, but it's hard to get them to see that because they're in the process of sort of emotional turmoil, if you will, sometimes, which is their own, sometimes which is aimed at their significant other, and it you have to figure out where they are in that process and like meet them there and help them figure out how to move through it from that point.
Hey, we just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about something very exciting that Debbie and I and our team have been working on for literally years. And that is our Core Tools app, which is now available at the Google Play Store and at the Apple Store. And you can sign up for it now and you will get access to all the tools we've been talking about on the podcast.
And if you're an early adopter of Core Tools, you can get a VIP price for $49 for a lifetime. That's
lifetime.
That's
Buy it once and we'll keep updating it too.
Yes. So we're super excited about this. Go to Apple Store, go to Google Play, and purchase it now.
Core Tools, COUR, capital TOOLS.
Go get it.
Yeah,
I've talked about this before, and people might think I'm like a little cold or something, but even though I ended up in divorce and I had kids and there was money and there's houses and all those things, there was a common goal that he and I both had, and that was that our children would be unharmed by this. And they were the number one goal. So everything else had to be put aside. Whoever got the houses, whoever got the money, whatever. It was those kids, and they were to have, and of course in California, they have to have both things at both houses, and everything has to be identical. So even that being said, the goal was the children. And I always say this in a fairly proud manner, is that there were people who were in our sphere. My husband and I were both coaches for our kids. We were very involved in our kids. We never didn't show up at another's function or whatever. But there were people that for 7 years of our lives had no idea even that we were divorced. Because it was just so much about our kids. And I would just tell people, it's just, for us, it was like running a business. Right. So you have the goal for the business, the goal is the children. And as long as we both stayed very focused on that one thing, everything turned out okay. And as a result, it did. We both are remarried, have happy lives, and our kids are doing pretty well. So it's interesting what you say about keeping the goal in mind. Now, I didn't learn that from my attorneys for sure, right? That was just something that he and I could agree on. But I love what you're saying about that. People can go off the rails on all kinds of different things, depending on what they're most attached to. And maybe it's their money, maybe, whatever it is, right?
Or some little trigger from their childhood, from the marriage, from whatever, that for whatever reason, when you touch that, it completely dysregulates them. And now, like you say, they're not hearing you. It's like a kid in school who's dysregulated, is not accessing their education. Your clients are not accessing your wealth of knowledge as a lawyer, because they're just not there. We all know what that's like. And I want to say one other thing, that, our society makes it so adversarial. So when someone talks about divorce, it's like, get yours, who won, who took them to the cleaners. Like, we need to put that old paradigm to bed, because it's so not helpful for, like you said, Jamie, about no one's really happy. Like, it's this idea that everyone's compromised. No one won. Like, because if you have a winner, you have a loser. And now everyone loses, in my opinion, because now you've lost that, especially with kids in the case. But, we are all connected. So talk a little bit about that idea of a more heart-centered, more holistic approach to ending a marriage.
I think it's the way that Sarah and I kind of innately have always practiced. There is a way to get through this process that does not, it's not scorched earth. It's not, and let me caveat that by saying there are certain cases that it is unavoidable.
Right.
We have had them, we have them currently. They will just always, but the majority of cases, especially if you can have those conversations, and Debbie, to your point, your attorney didn't show you that, but had you had an attorney who could kind of guide you in that direction, there is commonality here. There is something, certainly in the mediation vein, but there is something that we can all kind of center around in the process to find a common ground and then build upon that. And so I think it's just the way that we innately practice. We try to find, okay, is there a way to settle this? And if so, how can we do that in a way that is meaningful for our client? And what that is different to every person that we come across, but it's just listening and understanding. And sometimes the things that are driving those early conversations are not actually the drivers, they're the emotion, they're the it's those trigger points. It's the things that, well, he said, she said, they said, it doesn't, there's something there, but it's not what's actually driving them in the long run. We just have to kind of clear the air. And I know Sarah does this also. When I sit down with a client, I want to understand what their support structure looks like, because if they're relying upon me to be their therapist, and I will say it very directly, and you're overpaying me for a service that I'm not qualified to do. I'm very qualified to be your lawyer. I'm not qualified to be your therapist. I have a lot of therapists that I know that I'm happy to recommend, but what does your support structure look like? Do you have, because I think that's an important component of somebody kind of having outlets on how to, get through some of the emotional early stages of the process that they're dealing with.
Yeah. You talk about, I can't remember, I found this on your website or maybe it was on another podcast, but you talk about staying grounded. How do you do that? I imagine most people are thinking divorce is the last place I'm going to feel grounded, but I'm sure you must have techniques to help people feel like they can say it. And one is probably making sure they have a counselor, but what are some other things maybe they could do in this process?
So I think that one of the things that Jamie and I do pretty frequently, and I know that it's a sort of I don't want to use the word tactic because that sounds like deceptive in some way, but it's a pattern of behavior that our team has developed as well with the clients that we service. And it's really trying to like bring them back to the point or to the goal or to the reason that they said they wanted X, Y, or Z in the first place, and how to look past sort of what he said, she said, or the trigger points, Marci, that you were talking about. And can this serve you, even if they're winning per se in your mind from this perceived like sort of battle that you've been going through all these years? Does it matter to you? Because ultimately, does it serve your long-term goal to give them that or let them have it or share in it with them? And like, what are the pros and cons of that? And I think Jamie and I, we throughout the entirety of the process, there's always a risk analysis, not only with the cost of fees or what the court will do or don't, but also like, what is this costing you with time? What is this costing you in an emotional struggle? What are you losing in the end as to, are you losing college education funds? Are you losing the ability to, be financially stable in the future because you spent all this time and money litigating for something that may not actually be important to you 3 years from now? So like, let's talk about in this moment, what does this decision mean? Why are you reacting the way that you're reacting? And listen, we can't solve all your emotional woes. To Jamie's point, we're not supposed to be here for that purpose, but we can put it in the context of like your overall divorce and what you're attempting to achieve. And sometimes it teaches clients to sort of see the pattern of behavior that they're putting out. Like I have had plenty of clients, and I know Jamie has too. I just get forwarded an email. I didn't read the below. Explain to me what it says in your words, because otherwise I'm going to lose it. Like, so they know that they need to hear it, but they've stopped reading it and they wait for kind of like, and you learn that as a client. Like I forwarded something to a client in big, bold letters. This is for the file. Do not read it until we have talked on the phone because it will upset you. Like, and that way you can translate what it says in a way where the client doesn't have that like overwhelm and that emotional reaction to it. And they're listening to a voice that ostensibly they trust and that they understand will filter the information for them in a way that they can understand. And at that point, they're processing instead of just reacting. And so the conversation is much easier and it gives them time to like feel grounded in their decision, like you said, Debbie, and like come to a place where they can take the next step in the conversation without just fuming with zero action.
Yeah. They hit the nuke button. Yes. So you also talk about from conflict, creating opportunity. And I imagine everyone who comes to you is like, yeah, right. Like there's no opportunity unless they feel like they're taking the other one's money or they're getting the kids or whatever. But like real opportunity. Like I can see that now, 10 years, 15 years after the fact, like, oh my gosh, my life is friggin' amazing right now. But while you're in it, that's pretty hard to see. So how do you sort of give people hope about maybe a new opportunity or a new life on the back end of this?
I think it's the way in which you talk to people too. It's like we explain the tunnel effect, like you are here. We don't there's no expectation that in those early conversations that they're going to see it. But if you keep reinforcing it and you keep just kind of looping back to, and then I think, something that Sarah, and I love the word that she uses, agency, like you give somebody agency in their decision making, because sometimes that's what they're lacking in their partnership. And they haven't felt like they had the ability to make decisions for themselves or to advance something that they wanted to do or make a change and so all of a sudden it's kind of those little choices that they're making and making sure that, somebody feels empowered. I say, my job is to give you the advice. At the end of the day, you're the decision maker. I may agree with you. I may not agree with you. I'll tell you when I don't agree with you, but at the end of the day, you are the person who gets to make the next best choice for you. And so those little moments, you just kind of see it. You see it sort of like the tunnel widens a little bit, and then sometimes it gets smaller again, but eventually and it doesn't always happen, but our experience cumulatively is that the majority of the time it happens, and whatever that next phase is for somebody, it sometimes it's remarriage, sometimes it's a better relationship with their children, sometimes it's a new job opportunity, whatever it is. It's just those small kind of that empowering feeling happens somewhere along the process, and it's different for everybody. But we get cards at the holidays, and it's just it's really it is what makes the work that we do every day, which is hard, rewarding.
Hard and important.
Thank you.
It makes me think of something Debbie and I were just talking about the other day too. Sometimes you just need someone to tell you it's going to be okay. Like you're good. This sucks right now. Like you're in it and it is so hard, but you will get through this and you will be okay and you'll laugh again. You'll be happy again. So, take a breath. Like you said, maybe we need a break. Like this is not something you just push through. You got to take time, because just like when something happens that's so hurtful or harmful or something that you really have that reaction to when you're in it, it's hard, like you're sobbing, it's just dark and awful. It's hard to know that you're going to be okay. But if either you have the mental capacity to say, I'm going to feel better tomorrow, or someone else can say, God, this sucks right now. I'm here with you. I can listen to you, but know that it will get better. Just that little bit of hope can take you from that. Being hopeless or being in despair is absolutely the worst. So someone who can give you a little hope, give you a little piece of something to know that you'll get through this. It's not going to last forever. This too shall pass. However you want to put it. For me, I know that's really important.
I think that you can also do that in certain ways, in the way that Jamie was talking about, like provide them with hope. I've had a lot of conversations with clients, especially women, who have said, like, I don't know the financials, I don't have any of this understanding. Like, they control the money, they don't do this, they don't do that, or like, I can't understand this, or this doesn't make sense to me. And then they know more than they think they know. And like, there's little bits of information floating there, and they've watched this, or they've listened to that, or they've been able to give you this piece of information, and just sort of like echoing that for them. Like, hey,
Yeah.
like, do you realize that you did X, Y, or Z, and like you already know A, B, and C, or watching their behavior change and then sort of calling them out on it and saying to them, like, this is progress. Like, you told me you couldn't do X, Y, or Z, and you just did A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Take a step back and realize how far you've been in the last 3 months, just in this mess that you're in and where you are. And sort of like they start paying attention to the fact that there's already change, and they're already making steps. They are having agency, as Jamie says, like, and then they start to tune in a little bit more, like, oh, like, this is not the worst thing. And look, it ebbs and flows. It comes in waves. Emotion and grief are not a straight line, and time catches up with you at various points in time. I've had clients who are at war with each other, and then on the day of their divorce, they're sobbing, like, this is the end. And like, they didn't realize the impact it was going to have, because they were so angry for so long. And later they're like, well, that was sad. Yeah, it's still your life, man. Like,
Yes.
I love that you say that, because sometimes we do need people to point out to us our progress, because we don't see it. We're so good at, like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then, like, what did you think you just did there? Like, do you see that? I need you to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
That's
And
important.
sometimes they're conditioned to think that, like in their partnership, they're conditioned to think that they can't, or they won't, or they won't, it's just, and so I had a consult with a client, and she kept calling, she's like, I'm such an idiot. And it was driving me crazy. And finally I said to her, I was like, please stop putting yourself down. Like, you're not an idiot. You're not stupid. You haven't been given an opportunity to understand what is in front of you, but you will be. And it's my job to make sure that you have all the information that you need to make informed decisions. But like, it was like soul crushing, because, like, I could tell that's what she heard all the time. And so she began to accept that as her reality. And it was, so I think specifically for somebody like that, it's just, like that little bit of like empowerment, and no, I'm not an idiot. You're right. And I saw like, just like a shift in her body and her, just her demeanor. And it is something that, if, and I will pat us on the back a little bit. I don't think all attorneys
it's okay. You can do that.
I don't think all attorneys are attuned to that. It's like, so, to Sarah's point, kind of reading the room and understanding like what your client needs in that moment.
I want to bring up one more thing, because I think we're probably getting short on time here, but you talk a little bit about blended families, and there's a lot of that going on. People who come to you probably are not always in their first divorce, or maybe their second, and so there are lots of blended families out there. I don't know what the stats are on divorce now. It's more than 50%? I'm sure, probably higher by now. But anyway, talk about the blended family a little bit, and maybe some advice for those people who are in blended families, or blended families get broken up again, and that's really chaotic for a lot of people.
It's a hard space for us to be in. And when I say us, I mean collectively, like the family law community, because we do see a lot of cases, especially when we're acting as the litigators and not necessarily the mediators, of step parents who are, very involved in the situation currently. And we see that in good ways and bad ways. We see step parents who like actively love the children in question and who are supportive of the parent who has, sort of the legal rights to them, if you will, and like the obligations. You see them caring for kids that don't belong to them, legally, and supporting them financially. But you also see the step parents who are like very overstepping boundaries and sort of taking that on and crusading their own belief system and acting on behalf of the parent. And it's a fine line that you have to walk, especially when your client is the actual parent and the step parent is more involved in like the situation than the parent is. So you're sort of like, okay, white flag, like, hang on a second, let's de-escalate this. But, this is 2025, which is weird to say, but it's 2025. Families they look so different now. They have multi-generational, they have, raising kids together even after divorce. They have multiple partners. They have, exes raising kids instead of this. I'm in the middle of it now. I have a client who's the child's mother was in a same-sex relationship. They've recently divorced, and there's a question as to whether biological mom's time can be given to ex-stepmom instead of biological dad in this scenario. And the court's like, well, aren't we glad that there are more people? And dad's like, yes, but if they're not with mom, I want them with me because I want to spend more time with my kid. And it's like, what level do you, there's a lot of the onion here. And it's also what rights do step parents have when they are getting divorced? Like, what does the scope of that look like? Do they have financial obligations if they've committed to it? And it's one of those ever evolving areas that the court really hasn't caught up, I think, to like what society has created. And there are inroads in various places, especially progressive states, where more of this has come up. But it's still a very antiquated mindset and an antiquated system. And it is so restrictive to the way that people function in the world and raise children that more alternative dispute resolution, I think, comes up than not, because you need more unique solutions to unique circumstances as opposed to the cookie cutter answers that, history and society have given to us for the last 100 years.
Yeah. These old rigid paradigms and systems they're just not functioning. They're not serving now. And so there's so much that needs to be modernized or just thrown out and start over or whatever it is. And we've heard that from other guests as well. I think it's amazing that you're doing the work, that you're both showing up. This feminine energy, this feminine, more collaborative energy of let's serve everyone instead of let's get ours or let's win or let's dominate is really important. And love to see it in all professions. And I'm sure in the legal profession is one where that's probably has probably been a challenging line to walk, but I'm so glad you're both doing that good work.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for the work you're doing. And if I know anyone in New Jersey who's going through the process, I'm going to let them know who you are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
I do.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
And thank you so much for having us. It was
absolutely.
So nice.
It's been a great discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And now for your core mental health break. This is your opportunity to take a moment to support your mental wellness, your peace of mind, your own ease and grace. Take some time every day to support your mental health. You deserve it, and it matters.
Today's affirmation is, I deserve rest. Say it aloud with me. I deserve rest. One more time. I deserve rest. Let that be your mantra for today.
Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast, which is a production of our nonprofit, Core Experience, who also creates and distributes Core tools. You can find us at coreexperience.org. Make sure you join us next week for another informative conversation to help you and your family show up mindfully, purposefully, and joyfully with each other and in your community.
Our Core Tools platform consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in spite of what's going on in your world. We want to thank Samuel Hale, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. Technical and marketing support comes from Inspire Your Brand. Our podcast editor is Justin Beeden. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. Thanks for listening. If you resonate with the idea of creating a community to help support kids and families, won't you join us by following the podcast and sharing this episode? You can even write a review. It truly does take a village, and we appreciate you.